You are welcome to this new dialogue at the International Academy of Information Studies. Our main theme will be life and formalism, which is a fundamental question of science along many periods of time, particularly in our times and the previous century. Two main aspects will be dealt with by Andrei Igamberdiev, the quantum of life, consequences for formalism, and by Plamen Simeonov, myths and realities of formalism, perspectives after artificial intelligence. Andrei is professor at Memorial University of Newfoundland, Canada, chief editor of Biosystems, and Plamen is research professor and engineer and director of research of Integral Biomatics Institute. Well, and the ball is for Andrei. Andrei, you are welcome, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to give this talk and to participate in the discussion. I think definitely life and formalism is very important topic and central topic, and we see sometimes such approaches to this topic that, for example, mathematics cannot be fully applied to biosystems and other things, but we need to clarify all these problems, we need to clarify all these aspects, and we need to just understand the limits of formalism in biology. And the limits of formalism in biology is based on causality, actually, in biology. And causality, actually, from the very beginning, for example, when I was a student, I read one statement from Ivan Pavlov, who suggested that the final goal of physiologists is to predict the behavior of a dog with high precision, with highest possible precision. And in this case, if we put this goal, that means that we are not allowing animal or any biosystems to have some kind of freedom. So that means exactly like in physics, like just in narrowly understood reflex approach. And probably it's just matter of interpretation. Maybe Pavlov didn't mean this exactly to predict with absolute precision, but still the problem is that living systems, they have special type of causality that is different from physical causality. And this is actually, this was realized in different concepts of theoretical biology that were developed in the 20th century. And now we are starting to understand that such concepts as autopoiesis, chematon of Tibor Ganti, MR systems of Robert Rosen, they are actually approaches to the same. They have similar structure. Actually, Atal Cornish-Bowden emphasized this in his papers, that actually these are approaches that have something similar in the basis, and this was defined by Robert Rosen as living systems are close to efficient causation. If we will take causes, concept of four causes that Aristotle suggested. So we are talking about autopoiesis. It's probably the best word compared to chematon or MR system, autopoiesis. And auto, how to understand this auto and how, what limits this auto gives to autopoiesis, gives to formalization of biosystems, is what we need actually to realize and to understand. So Aristotle was probably the first who considered that life is the process of having the cause in itself. In the anima, on the soul, he actually suggested this. And how we can evaluate the cause in itself from the attraction to a sustainable final state. So we cannot avoid final state in biology. We cannot avoid it even if we take Darwinism, natural selection. It is actually related explanation to final cause, survival of the fittest. And so we have limits of formalization and special formalization tools. For example, Rosen developed the most detailed scheme, although there are some criticism to these different points of view, but it was certainly a grandiose program that he developed. And we can say that evaluation from the final state can be sometimes recognized as the fourth law of thermodynamics, like, for example, Stuart Kaufman suggests now. And this is considered that we need to evaluate biosystems from the kind of attraction to certain state, not from just determinism that we have in mechanics or something like that. And this is important. So it's fourth law, it's probably not correct term because it's rather constrained than law, but still this is very important aspect of biological systems, so attraction to certain state. And I will talk about this a little bit more a few minutes later. So also theoretical biology, how it was formulated in biosemiotic way to Jakob von Uexküll in early 20th century. It's also, you know, it's adjustment of system by functional action to recognizing some low energy informational constraints. Actually, James Barham in 25-30 years ago actually made a little bit more precise understanding of all these interactions with the environment. So it's again internal cause of this adjustment of the state to by recognizing very low energy constraints from the environment. Uexküll called it Funktionskreis, function cycle, and this actually is also important approach that can be recognized in the whole concept of autonomy.
Excuse me, Andrei.
Yes.
We only see the first slide. Is that okay?
No. How it's now? Codopoetic representation of the central dogma. I see on my computer.
No, we are stuck in the first slide. In the title.
That's not good. That's not good, unfortunately. Why it is not working? Because on my computer it works. Should I stop slideshow and then
maybe you can see all of your screen better than only the window of PowerPoint.
Yes, yes. How's now?
Good.
Yeah, okay, so do you see previous slide?
Yes.
Okay,
You have been very fluent. It was very easy to follow you.
okay, is it now changing?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So if we take the central dogma of molecular biology, so from replication to transcription to translation, in the more general whole scheme that actually Robert Rosen suggested, and that can be further adjusted, we see not only deterministic transfer of information unidirectional from DNA to RNA to proteins, but also other things like rearrangements through combinatorial dynamic pool of nucleic acids. And so internal reshuffling of information and not only deterministic transfer of information. So this is really important to realize that the central dogma, it's only a part of the whole scheme that actually Robert Rosen suggested, and that can be further adjusted, that contains also kind of goal-directedness from combinatorial dynamic pool of nucleic acids, rearrangements, everything that results in the most fittest phenotype. And there are many different ways of getting this to fit into this final state. Not only natural selection, but also some internal mechanisms that become more powerful during biological evolution, so it develops. Okay, so next, do you see the next slide with Koichiro Matsuno? Okay, great. So we are talking about some quantum aspects of life, life as quantum, and so on. And I would like to mention the works of Koichiro Matsuno. He suggested that dissipation of energy, so very low effective temperature when macromolecules work. For example, he considered ATP dependent muscle contraction and showed that very low emission of quanta may take place, and this indicates ultra low temperature, so coherent state. And this coherent state, so we have dependence of energy, dissipation of energy, and time of certain process. And if we take, for example, enzyme, the time of conformation relaxation of enzyme can be quite long. It can be in some enzymes up to milliseconds or even seconds. And during this time, so this time means that low dissipation of energy and very precise action of biological macromolecule. So the precision, so internal this process, this precision of biological processes, it results in the possibility of precise transfer of information in biological systems. So, and this corresponds to very, very low effective temperatures during this coherent state. And this temperature is many orders of magnitude lower than the cold background temperature for the universe, approximately 2.7 Kelvin. And this opens the possibility of Bose-Einstein condensates that exist at ultra low temperatures. So when, for example, we consider the approach that biological systems, they have quantum-like properties. It's not only quantum-like, it's not only similarity, but it is also essence, which is based on these ultra-low effective temperatures of coherent states that exist in biological macromolecules. And this is actually, we also should remember the third law of thermodynamics. And in third law thermodynamics, it shows that order, low entropy, is achieved at 0 Kelvin. So by approaching to 0 Kelvin, we approach order. And this is actually, so maybe it is a matter of discussion, but I think this is very important aspect that these ultra low temperatures are really achieved in coherent states in biological systems. Okay, and then we come to the idea of internal quantum computation and to molecular computer of the cell that was developed by Efim Lieberman. His 100th anniversary, so we published a paper in Biosystems dedicated to his 100th birthday. And he died 14 years ago, and he is very important, actually his contribution is very important. He predicted RNA splicing several years before its discovery, because so he considered that molecular computer can function only like using this reshuffling of information. So he defined the fundamental property of life as molecular and quantum computational systems. So quantum computing inside the cell. So it's internal computation. Matsuno says about internal measurement, but Lieberman goes further and saying internal computation. So when we formalize life, we need to realize that we already have formal system within biological system. And so we are describing formal system, so formalizing the system that has its formal system inside, and which is actually realized, for example, through the system of biological codes. So this is important idea that was actually expressed by Lieberman in 1972 first time, and then further developed. So this is just summary of natural computation. I don't have time to discuss this in more detail, but he suggested several limits of computation, four principles that limit, that define computation in biological system. He considers the Planck's constant as a lowest limit of computation, and he considered it not only minimum action, but minimum price of action in the computation. And this is actually important. Further, it was developed by Landauer, by Bekenstein, by others, but on the basis, Lieberman was the first there. But the second principle, which he started to develop, is that biological system in its development and evolution establishes the spatio-temporal patterns that are maximally predictable and can sustain the stable, coherent state for a prolonged time. So it's kind of also formulation of what some people call the fourth law of thermodynamics. So it's final goal, final cause, maximum predictable state, the most fit state of biological system. Then he considered time as irreversible because of measurement process, because in measurement and calculation the process is fundamentally irreversible, and causality is a decision of the controlling system performing quantum computation. So again, it is this internal cause according to Aristotle, and this is really important. So this imposes the limits of our formalization of biological system, because actually the cause of movement in life, in living system, is inside the system generally. So there are several formulations of what is called the fourth law of thermodynamics. Yefim Lieberman's principle of optimum prediction as the fourth law, it's one possibility. Erwin Bauer, actually, we republished his main works in biosystems this year and translated in English. 1920 book from German, 1935 book from Russian. He was the victim of Stalin's Great Terror, and he was killed in 1938. 1938, yes. In January, and before that he published the book Theoretical Biology, and he formulated the principle of sustainable non-equilibrium, and also formulated the principle of an increase of the external work in evolution. And similar actually approach was developed by Alfred Lotka in 1922. He suggested the principle of maximum power. That means biological system strives to maximize the amount of energy passing through it. Modern formulation, Adrian Bejan formulated it as a principle of constructal law. Stuart Kaufman suggests that living organisms are the wholes that achieve constrained closure by performing thermodynamic work to construct themselves. So there are several approaches to this, and this is actually quite important to understand that this is actually different views of the same idea, that we need to, biological system has the basic constraint that determines their sustainable functioning and evolution. I don't have time to talk about foundations of mathematics here, but I just wanted to mention that Vladimir Voevodsky suggested that all foundations should be verified computationally, and actually living system, they verify computationally the new decisions, new evolutionary innovation, and so on. And this is actually can be considered as codepoiesis, and codepoiesis, so Kurt Gödel when he suggested the theorem of incompleteness. He suggested that all formal systems have statements that cannot be proven or disproven by means of the system. And to prove them, it is necessary to encode them externally. So this is actually realized in the biological evolution. And so the main idea that living systems continuously solve the Gödel theorem. So they impose meanings to the statements that were not originally defined within the system. And this is the basis of evolution that Marcello Barbieri defined as codopoiesis. So in addition to autopoiesis that actually defines the biological system in homeostatic state, codopoiesis defines it as evolving system, and this is actually connected with kind of, because it is formal system inside, it has indefinite statements, and they are just allotted by meanings during this process. Okay, so from this point of view, we can see physical and logical parallelism in evolution. So in logical, from the logical part, left side, we have logical undecidability, incomplete identification, for example, of biological system with external medium environment, logical undecidability that results in formation of new statement, encoding of them, and development of multi-level hierarchy. But from the point of view, physical point of view, we have physical uncertainty. And actually, physical uncertainty was considered by Koichiro Matsuno as evolutionary engine, and reduction of uncertainty then results in memorization of reduction, then to anticipatory dynamics and hierarchogenesis, growth of complexity that results in final state of sustainable non-equilibrium, if we talk in Bauer's, define it in Bauer's terms. And finally, I would like to say that the quantum of life and formalism, it's very important aspect of this, that quantum-like properties of biological systems and quantum-inspired computation performed by them can be grounded in the existence of internal quantum state of them. So what Andrei Igamberdiev suggests, quantum-inspired computation, it has physical background in biological systems. And this we need to consider from the point of view of life and formalism. So internal formalism, and when we describe it, impose our formalism, we need to certainly just solve these paradoxes. And the states, internal quantum states, have ultra-low effective temperatures and sustain the stable operation of percolating information networks supporting the holistic properties of biosystems. I think that's all for the beginning. I just wanted to outline briefly the main points that I wanted to clarify, and it will be great to further to listen to Plamen's talk and then to discuss this fundamental concept of life and formalism. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, and nice to listen to you.
Thank you.
Now you have been also quite punctual with the timing. Now it is time, Plamen's time. Plamen, you are welcome to the virtual board.
Okay. Let me, I'm going to show you most of the stuff, starting with the title, Life and Formalism. These are, well, very large subjects to be discussed, and I will show you a guy that you probably know, this one, David Hilbert, maybe more than 100 years ago. He, well, claimed that, well, it was about mathematical physics, but he wished to make actually design the perfect system. So basically his claim was that Mathematics can describe any system, virtually any system. It proved that it is not correctly the case. Andrei actually said about the phenomenon, basically the Gödel's theorems prove that it is not the case. There are systems in this world that cannot be described from the if we participate the system. So they can be described on another level, in another dimension, but cannot be the incompleteness theorem. So we have to live with this, and there is a guy that you probably also know. I mean, I'm just going to show you Richard Feynman, who actually I was fascinated by his work in years ago, but basically with relation to biology and computation, there is a very interesting analogy in his work. So he actually defined the how the quantum computer should look like, or the quantum automation. This system should be a system that is actually also a quantum automation, and the same is the analogy for biological systems. So in case that if we wish to formally describe systems and be complete, just as the many authors before, I mean, like Robert Rosen and here Nicholas Rashevsky, his actually teacher. I've got the guys from 3 generations, Rashevsky, Rosen, and then Aloysius Louis. So actually the category theoretician guys that try to formally describe, actually to abstract living systems in a similar way like Maturana and Varela with their auto-reality theory. So these are the works that we are starting to work with, and I'm mixing up here a little bit these topics because they're very interdependent. So basically, shortly to say about me, I have a background in physics, but I didn't complete my physical studies. I moved into engineering, and then further basically mathematics, physics, then engineering, and later I came back to again to the same topics that I was interested in my younger years. So from my studies, I have been always interested into how living systems operate, and maybe even with at the age of 18, I began designing systems, actually genetic systems, with digital computers, but they had this format, actually punching cards. And the laws of genetics were interesting for me. I mean, it was in my school. So I've been doing with the subjects for maybe for 50 years now, I mean, if I consider this seriously. These topics were interesting to me, and what Andrei said about models and evolutions. So I will start with the confrontation of these two topics, life and formalism. It appears that the one thing cannot be described by the other because they are very different, but there are so many authors, including Rashevsky and Rosen, these guys here, that from 3 generations here, including Aloysius Louis, and using category theory, which was the last theory that I actually stopped with, and met Andrea Eresman in our group. I mean, so she designed the so-called dynamic category theory, and tried to explain many interesting phenomena that are related to living systems, because basically mathematics is declarative mathematics. I mean, that we use also programming, computer programming. I've been working in these systems for the past 50 years in different ways, and they're discriminative systems. So anyway, what I wish to say, and my topic is actually myths and realities of formalism. and perspectives of after AI. So about the myths, the first myth was this one, that we can actually design everything. David Hilbert and his claim that well, mathematics can describe any system and any function. It proved that it is not that simple, and it was proven by basically Gödel and his principles. Another a physicist who is actually also here, for David Neumann, realized what Gödel said, and I mean this belongs to the past and the history, and basically, actually, this book is also a historical book. It is no more used in the basis, but he tried to explain quantum systems in his way, just in the way as Rashevsky and Rosen tried to explain biological or living systems, so by means of category theory. So anyway, the point that I wish to address here is about the myths and realities in formalism. So the myth is that the systems can be complete. It is not true. We can come as close as possible in the way as here other guys like Leibniz and Newton did in designing their calculus. So this is a classical book with these guys, and basically what they tried to I made here appointment is an innovation in the Newton's description, so that mathematical values can be are in movement, and they this is actually the definition of differential calculus. So it was an innovation in mathematics. It has not been used earlier, but he said that things are in a flow, which is a very, very, very distinctive, also not only for mathematics, for physics. The real problem that both these two guys had to decide was about defining or calculating the surface of certain objects, and both of them designed a calculus very close to each other, so as if, well, they were copying each other, but they had a different approach there. So in a way, I want to say that how much theoretical mathematics, so this is pure mathematics, differential and integral calculus, is close to real world problems. Actually, the calculating the surface of certain objects. So every one of these guys designed his method, but it was very pragmatical, close, just like programming. Programming was not known at that time, so they designed a kind of calculus that was as close as possible to calculus. So in a way, I was interested by these efforts, and basically most of the time, actually it was the motivation for me to start such projects with interacting scientists and trying to design systems, biological systems, which were, well, for a very long time part of my interest. So I will show you here another example by a little bit encoding by Gauss. So it's actually his mathematical actually diary, and he was actually a paranoid guy, and was writing in a way that nobody can encrypt him. But here is another statement that you probably can read, and it is a discovery of him. This is the way how he described his discoveries in Latin in short sentences and formulas, so he could remind himself. So basically, this is an encrypted book. I mean, his diary, and because he made a lot of discoveries. The interesting point to me was that later, many years later, I discovered with Werner von Siemens a similar way. I mean, he was an electrical guy, but he was also describing systems and describing his invention in an embodied way. But basically, it doesn't matter. So formal descriptions and formal methods are the one thing, but the myths are that this is the myth of Hilbert. We can describe systems completely. In real life, we deal with incomplete systems, and this is the problem also with biological systems or living systems, and therefore the realities and all the models, I mean, life and formalism, we can only come as close as possible to this life and formalism. So the claim of Feynman was that it was for a quantum system, for a physical system, but the statement holds also for biological systems. In order to calculate or describe the biological system in a similar way, I have to design a quantum computer for a quantum system. In order, the system should be as close as possible to each other to define all the states that we can observe. And we human beings cannot observe anything. So our description, our mathematics, whatever we use as a theoretical background, is actually limited to our perception. So therefore, the basic questions and also the first people who began asking these inconvenient questions also were physicists. So they were dealing with borderline project questions, and Schrödinger was one of them. He was actually nuclear physicist, but his later life he became interested in living systems in life. So living systems were actually formalized in a similar way that physicists were doing with their systems. But physical systems are discrete and deterministic. The problem with living systems is that we have a different form of interdependence. It is much more complex. If you observe equations that are usually used in physics, you can describe a system or with, a system of equations, no matter whether this is in differential calculus or whatever. So there can be described and observed, actually pragmatically observed. In biology, we often have the problem, and this has been stated by also some other guys, or members of the community, like Ted Goranson, Koichiro Matsuno, that we discussed. So we have equations, but these equations are changing all the time. We have interdependence, which is not basically saying you don't have left hand side and right hand side really in such kind of equations. They are changing their sides constantly, so in different points of time. So therefore you have for instance some phenomena in if you try to describe the generation of some biological structures like what can I say? You have the problem that they become recursive, internally recursive and self-defining. So you cannot define left-hand side and right-hand side of equations, and this makes difficult to design models that are actually structured. There were colleagues from that many of you know from basically also from the Society of Pedro, like Ted Goranson, and we were talking about some kinds of mechanisms to come closer to designing such systems, or actually modeling such systems with flipping left-hand side and right-hand side of equations. And there were some models, we had some projects, but it is not that easy. So basically my question, or the issue is the discovery of distinction. So this is the beginning, and maybe some of you that participated the lectures of Lou Kaufman, who is a topologist, and we have discussed very common subjects in mathematics and the limits of mathematical modeling and computational modeling. So in his questions, I also had my questions, is that living systems cannot be so simply described even by means of category theory, which was my latest station, and I was able to even, probably Andrei Igamberdiev, who is also category theorist. So basically 2 or 3 generations of mathematicians who tried to describe living systems, starting with Rashevsky, then Robert Rosen, and his scholars like Andrei Igamberdiev and Aloysius Louis. So all the formalist guys that try to describe living systems, but they're incomplete in a way. And you have here the analogy with the incompleteness theorem of Gödel. So basically we realized that in our models and in our formal descriptions, I began working on programming and formal definitions maybe 30 years ago. We came as close as possible, just like actually an iterative theorems for proving something, but you never come to the real truth. So my point was about defining these definitions. So how far can we go in life and formalism? Are there mappings that can actually one-to-one mappings between life and formalism? And we realized that this myth was basically of David Hilbert was neglected or actually proved that is not cannot be realized. So the new myth that we are meeting here is the one about AI. So I could say that maybe I was also involved in the initial beginnings of artificial intelligence algorithms and programs starting in the 80s and then later into the 2000s. And it was relatively clear the whole definition of what artificial intelligence means, and hard artificial and soft artificial intelligence, about the methods that can be used. And in the recent years, say since 2020, during the COVID years, we realized a real revolution of the definition of what AI is, and I said, okay, this cannot be AI. It is some kind of, decorative programming, rule-based system and automation, but it shouldn't be. But very large databases, of course, used to match. So basically, there was this problem for me to realize that AI is, or the life here, the topic of my talk, perspectives after AI. I would ask here, what means after AI? AI has basically at least 3 stages, and we actually, if AI is basically what is understood today, I would say, okay, this is maybe only a small part of what was understood in the 1980s, just a limited language models and automation, so language automation, automated databases. But according to some authors, we are experiencing they're warning even scientists like Jeff Hinton, for instance, that we cannot understand the system and they can basically derive some surprises that we are not expecting. In many cases, human beings have been, I'm more positive here in this way, have been controlling systems they cannot, they don't know well. For instance, driving a car, not everybody understands how the engine is working. There are many kinds of engines, just like in physics, but people can drive these cars and they have control over them. The other situation is also with I mean, there are naturally fears about understanding general AI, but most people do not know how technology works and they use them, refrigerators and, you know, similar. So the fears are natural, and the fears are because of losing control over systems that cannot be explained easily. And they may be a little bit exaggerated, but also correct, I would say. Sometimes we don't know how systems can develop. Maybe they can become non-human, just like in the movies that Terminator, whatever, that was done. So these systems are considering human beings as competition and try to get rid of them. So this is perhaps a common fear, and it is one of the reasons why people are very careful with all this technology. But nevertheless, it is accelerated. I think the point is here that acceleration in technology has gained very the scale is very large. So people are using now AI in such a way. I mean, the new definition of AI, large language models, and the question here between us is mathematical theories and computing languages are dedicated to solving some problems, and we have been trying all the time to solve these problems with these languages, problems that we people, human beings, are facing as such. So the question here is, if this automation, I mean, saying artificial system robots are given these tools and they try to solve their problems, is not this going to be our problem? So they could try to get rid of human beings because they're too lazy, too non-effective, whatever. I mean, to design their own principles and reasons for that. So I would like to come here back to the statement that Andrei said about systems that are complete or incomplete, and what is coming from them. I mean, where are we going? Even in a mathematical formalism starts with a distinction. I mean, this is what Luke Kaufman is actually stating, starting with the distinction and then trying to design some statements about points, circles, triangles, lines, and then design some kind of theorems to base to design a system that is based on certain principles like perception, abstraction, consensus about the thing that has been done, some kind of shape, properties and purpose. So the whole mathematics and the formulas that we are dealing with are actually abstraction of operations that we are doing with objects in our mind. And everything is limited to the limits of our mind and perception of what we have. So mathematics, theoretical mathematics and programming languages are in so far related that they have different kinds of abstractions, but coming very close to them. And so declarative programming, object-oriented, process-oriented, functional languages, and they all are coming together. Just for me, mathematics and programming are, well, two sides of the same thing. And this is our model. So I would like, do I have somewhere the modeling correlation of Robert Rosen? Maybe it's here. Yes, this is the modeling correlation of a real system. I have it also in some different aspects. Can you see it? Okay. Basically, on the left-hand side, you have the natural system, and on the right-hand side, you have the model system or the mathematical model. And there are mappings between these two systems which are very well definable by category theory. You can come as close to the real model, to the real system, with using functions, functional programming, etc. But in some way, what is missing here is the evolution of the systems. This is what Andrei said earlier in his talk, that systems are incomplete and they develop. They are moving all the time, and this is just a static snapshot. So we can try to map the formal system with a natural system as far as possible if it's steady, it is not moving, or there is no exchange between certain, whether fluids or functions. This is just an abstraction. What we have, I have this design in an improved design of this mapping relation between model and real system, and the iteration of mapping between these two systems. I have it in one of my papers, and basically it is a kind of spiral. So it goes into the third dimension, and it is a permanent, actually iterative structure to map the two systems, the natural and the functional system. It is an endless process, I must say. So you can never be, a system, no matter how many, details you're having, you face here the problem that Feynman faced, to say, okay, in order to model a real system, my computational operators have to be the same one. So actually the mapping to be one-to-one, I don't need actually transistor. So in this way, in order to describe a quantum system, I need a quantum computer. So, and in this case, for life itself, I need a biological computer. So a biosystem that can map all this. But here is the interesting question, how far living systems are close to physical systems. In some way, something is hidden. I'm trying to giving it this statement just as a riddle. It has been stated by Nikola Tesla, and he investigated the piezo crystals, and actually he was thinking it is a living element, so just a crystal, and it has been used. Somewhere I found actually a description by him that basically he considered the crystal as a living entity, as a living object, because it was actually generating by the piezo crystal was generating energy, and to our opinion, of course, a crystal is a crystal, but it has very interesting properties, electric properties, and it is in the base of many devices that we're using, LCD screens, watches, in our everyday. And if you say, okay, this is a living being, just as Tesla considered, he had a different metrics. Okay, maybe this is enough for the moment. My point was that formal systems, formal logic, I have been dealing with logic basically, not with category theory, as like Rosen, like Andrei Igamberdiev. I met her very well, so I tried to understand the whole feature that Rosen, Rashevsky, and all these guys, she was knowing also Aloysius We. The point was that we can define as close as possible a living system by different methods, even with logic, only with logic. Category theory is definitely a very great tool to describe such systems, but it should be dynamic. Andrea was working towards a dynamic category theory, and so was Aloysius Louis. So basically, the idea that I also discussed with Ted Goranson, he is also on the FIS list, was actually flipping logic that was flipping the operator's left-hand side and right-hand side. So this dynamic also in logic. And some of the papers are published that I discussed, but basically we're doing with some kind of, iteration towards mapping the real world, and it is limited by our
Plamen,
perception.
excuse me. Could we start now the debate part?
Yeah, okay. I'm finished. I mean,
Yeah.
I try to be more flexible with describing the problem.
You have invented a new way to make slides. I mean, you show the books.
Yeah, I mean,
quite
not only the
interesting.
books, I could write actually my notes on the books because I was trying to understand them. I mean, category theory was completely new to me 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Or other. For instance, in Feynman, I found the metaphor about quantum computation, and for biological computing, I was thinking the same. If you want to have a biocomputer, it has to be a similar system. I mean, it should be quantum physics is, of course, it's physics, but in living organisms we have a lot of phenomena that are physical. The problem is that in physics is more complete. I mean, and biology is incomplete. We have this theorem by Gödel.
Just to change a little bit the panorama of the talk, there was a message from Jixin Fong.
Okay.
Because he could not attend this meeting. And then I will show the message is very brief. And then you first, Andrei, and then you, Plamen, you can respond to it, because I think it is very interesting, and he uses a very, very simple language. Okay, I will share a screen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it? Oh my God, no, my goodness. This info. Can you see it, please?
Yes. I think I saw this. I mean, you sent this to us earlier.
The dialogue on life and formalism is very important and interesting topic. Unfortunately, the midnight time for the dialogue is not convenient for people in Beijing. Therefore, I would like to point the following different of life and formalism via email. One, first, if the objective of the study is to understand the biological structure, this term is quite enigmatic. The formalism is necessary and right. Mm-hmm. If the objective of the study is to try to understand the human-animal intelligence, the formalism is far from correct. In the second case, non-formalism, which keeps the trinity of form, utility, and meaning and content, is necessary and right. This is the explanation of large language models' failure. But I have a strong disagreement with point one, because if we try to understand the biological structure, the formalism is necessary and right, but completely insufficient. Because I am always reminded on St. George when he was writing that water is the less understood substance of the universe, the most enigmatic. And water is the mother of life, the cradle of life. And as far as I know, there is no model of life that can capture all its properties from the ultra cold states and all the kinds of ice to the different kinds of steam. So from the beginning, the formalism talking about the structure is short, it's incomplete, as you were saying. And then to understand human intelligence, we have, in my view, the same problem. I mean, formalism is very short. I think Plamen, I think Andrei, you were talking about Pavlov, initial approach to the mathematics of biology and behavior.
Yes, I think it is kind of, simplification. The problem is that when we discuss intelligence, we also need to realize the limits of formalism and intelligence and how to describe these limits from some kind of formalism that we impose in it with understanding of limitations of our formalism. So it's a bit paradoxical situation, but saying that intelligence cannot be, formalism cannot be applied to intelligence, it's also oversimplification. For example, Vladimir Lefebvre, in his psychological theory, he suggested just simple Boolean algebra to understand different types of social behavior. And this is actually application of formalism. And as I realized, it is actually some kind of formalization of approach in psychoanalysis. For example, Jacques Lacan suggested this semiotically, but here there is some kind of additional clarification. We just cannot cannot take formalism as something ultimately complete. That's the thing.
Yeah,
but still, I don't think that we can oppose structure and intelligence or something like that. They are interrelated.
Okay.
Well, it is related to also to Gödel's theorem, and the second theorem that as far as when we are part of the whole system, I mean, even we have to be a third person. I mean, therefore, we talk about first person, second, and third person descriptions, system descriptions. And Gödel realized something that actually only at his talk, The Physical Society, I think, only John von Neumann was able to understand what he is meaning. That and the meaning was for quantum physics, but in the same situation we have also for with living systems. We are not able, being part of these systems, we are not able to comprehend everything. So we can come as close as possible. It is a step of iterations, but these systems are moving all the time. They are changing. There is much more knowledge that is entering the system. So all the models that we're using, no matter whether these are is category theory, knot theory, all the tools that the mathematics is giving us. I mean, system theory, basically as a synthesis of many mathematical theories. The problem is that they're static. I mean, life is dynamic. It's and this is what Robert Rosen tried to describe with his mappings and mapping relations of science.
Yes.
And so basically it's a dynamic that we cannot follow it completely. There is always some delta that remains undescribable to us because we are also part of the system, and this is one of the Gödel's theorem. Basically, we cannot see everything, and we can get deeper and deeper in our models to map them. But in order to make completely a system, it has to be dead. So we have to kill it, and then you can describe everything inside. But it won't be a living system anymore. That's the problem. And
but excuse me, Plamen, don't you think that in some way the new branches of artificial intelligence are killing this discussion and making it obsolete? Because I see the working of people working in bioinformatics and all the new genetic studies, etc. And it is really a new era. I don't know how, if we consider the dynamics of artificial intelligence within the algorithmic and the formalistic field. I don't think so. I think it is basically hyper statistical.
The problem is that I tried to point earlier. I mean, I've been working also in modeling. I mean, most of the time, any kinds of models of systems, engineering system, and then later living systems, as far as possible. But the problem is now that I realize, particularly with AI, is that the discipline is redefining itself. So this is the interesting phenomenon. What I understood under, artificial intelligence and principles, these were the earlier fathers like Marvin Minsky, a couple of this generation of guys, and there were two branches, hardliners and softliners AI. And now what we have in the past 10 years is some kind of LLM models, large language models, which are, for me, I mean, personally, please excuse me, these are automated databases. This is the database science, I mean, from computer science, met and said, okay, that's AI. Sorry, but I'm not happy with this.
But there is deep learning in all the structure of the neural networks inside. So there is more than just databases. I mean,
yes, but there is also the deep learning structure. It's actually algorithm theory and databases combined, both of them. And of course, this mixture is interesting, but this is not everything that's AI. When there are people who say, okay, from our robots that we design, consciousness will emerge at some point of complexity. I disagree absolutely with this. So consciousness is much more. I mean, you can ask psychologists and everybody else. So
no, but it is. I think it is a new category, or very powerful. Let's say metaformal systems or meta-algorithmic systems of a very challenging perspective, so to speak, in all the ways. I mean, from in the relationship with humans, in biological research, in almost all fields of study. I mean, for instance, we have the jury team seat who is working in the way the ribosome works. So they could not make sense on the way the proteins of the ribosome work, except now going into advanced now artificial intelligence programs, so to make sense on this kind of protein neural networks. And so I think they are entering more and more. Perhaps the last frontier, I would say, is the neuroscience, because now the mixing is far more difficult to achieve. And then, Andrei, you can have a good perspective in biosystems, in the work you receive, the enormous change from when you started in the biosystems edition to now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you'll permit me, this is terrific. Wonderful presentation, fascinating. I approach things as a cell, in a cell-based manner, a cellular biologist's point of view. So, for example, Gordana has done terrific work on infocomputation and how that works through living systems. And I think that is subject to substantial formalism, rigor, typical scientific rigor that we value. The problem is that's half of the equation within a cell. Cells live in constitutive ambiguity, and they self-create all their own information.
Yes.
Through a process called info-autopoiesis. This is Jaime Cardenas Garcia's very excellent idea. This has distinct, it clarifies where things stand in biology versus computers, getting right to the issue of AI and its capacities. The other half of a cellular intelligence is feeling. It supports a state of preference. We don't understand why that is true. We don't understand exactly how it acts. But we can empirically observe that cells have states of preference, and they defend that to active homeoretic flux. That's what they do all day long. As Stu Kaufman would say, they uphold themselves. And they're upholding a state of preference, which has been very under-recognized in biology. The point is, AI is a form of intelligence, and it is incredibly seductive to the point that it can easily fool any of us that it is a living system, but it has no internal subjective state. And the problem with saying that AI will develop a subjective state is we haven't the slightest idea how to do that. We don't have the beginning tools to understand how to interrogate that, because by definition, it's an internal, exclusive, self-referential moment within a cell. and an ephemeral one. So we're really not at that threshold. What we can say is AI will change everything in the future. And it will do so through its own form of exclusive intelligence. It'll be another form of diverse intelligence like Mike Levin, we will talk about. But it will not be a subjective conscious entity. And we may not care. We may just love dealing with it and prefer our conscious friends who contradict us all the time.
Yeah, I couldn't more agree with that, what you say. So basically, what is coming, the warning of Jeff Hinton was basically he couldn't understand the system. He's a designer of such systems, and we as human beings, they are talking to each other, two AI systems talking to each other completely, well, we don't know how this works. And maybe this is some very old fear of human beings that if they do not understand something and do not know how these connections are coming, so they consider them as a hostile. So this is basically very, very human fear and natural, of course, if we don't understand what the systems are talking to each other, or two people in a different language, so they may be planning something against us. We don't know, but this the feeling of having control over systems is very natural. I mean, until this moment, having AI, we have been controlling any kind of engine. I mean, in human development, and were helping us. Now with AI, we have the problem that we do not understand how they function. I mean, this is the situation of, and there were even some, I think, some.
Well, excuse me, Plamen. I disagree. We know how they work. I mean, they have a constitutive diversity of inner directions and a fascinating granularity in the way they distribute and manipulate information. And what I find very interesting is that there is not one system of artificial intelligence. Thanks to capitalism, we have an enormous competence between at least 10, 20, I don't know how many more different models we have. Societies like the Chinese society probably would be worried that a system by control by the communist, by the Central Committee of the Communist Party, the Chinese Communist Party, would control everything with the party on command. But the strong, let's say, division of work, competence, different companies, different initiatives of the Western countries, I think it's a guarantee against this artificial intelligence catastrophe, that one system will monopolize everything. I don't think that Jim Bezos and Elon Musk will cooperate, and Sam Altman and all the other different companies. I don't think that they will create a mega unified something. I don't think so. Because it was Marx's critique on the monopolies of capitalism and the end of capitalism by the end of competition, and then so to speak, the mutual assured destruction. I think it is exactly the opposite. They wouldn't have any fear of that single power.
Yeah. Well, AI is going to, the point I wish to say, I wanted to say or said earlier, was that the mere fact that we do not understand how two AI systems or what they talk to each other. This is just like in case you have a Chinese and a Thailand guy and they talk to each other, we don't understand the language. That's the phenomenon that Jeff Hinton actually mentioned. If I do not understand, they may be actually planning something against humanity. We don't know. But the mere fact that that they talk something or they develop their own way of communication, which can become a real wave. I mean, also a hostile wave. The system can start thinking we are more intelligent than the human beings. We are going to enslave them. I mean, because we are more performant, whatever. But at the end, this is an artificial system. I mean, it can live, maybe it can fit itself with electricity and other, you know, basically resources to live, just like other systems we know, living systems working. But the question is, where is our role? This here is so natural of human beings, of being actually, you know, left behind or even killed. Who knows? I mean, it's our civilization could be in danger.
What I am personally afraid is that these new systems of communication, of information regime in our societies, including artificial intelligence, has created a new social environment quite full of toxicities. The societies have not digested well the new information revolution, the last one, particularly after cell phones, social networks, etc. I think that this is a big social problem we have, given human nature in the way young people are socialized. We are like playing with. I mean, this is what I most fear for our societies, that we are creating a lot of internal discord into societies, polarization, and all the crisis with the different minorities that claim against all who knows what, and this level of discord can be menacing. Also with the help, but they don't need artificial. We don't need artificial intelligence to create this social collapse, so to speak. I mean, we are watching now demonstration in many places, particularly by the young generation, and I think that societies don't have a good relationship with science itself. I mean, in science, we have failed to connect with the inner drives of societies to understand well the social processes derived from communication, from information. And I think we have some wrong conceptual structure and in different branches of science that does not facilitate the connection with society. We cannot talk directly well to society and to young people and to people with the many complaints about all the different crises we have, and you will kill me because I'm going to say that one of the culprits I see is the concept of autopoiesis. I am against autopoiesis for many reasons, for the biology itself, for the application in psychology, for the social view of autopoiesis, etc. This is one of the vacuum concepts that do not connect with the inner drives of the human being, of society, etc. So the hell for autopoiesis.
Well, but have you heard? I mean, I've seen the first programs of Varela. He was actually modeling autopoietic systems in computer in Fortran, for the computing guys. So basically, I mean, they saw that they probably developed something a new concept, just like, I mean, intelligence. I mean, AI is also a concept that emerged out of human beings, and autopoiesis, this self-organization, this typical for living systems, and it was welcome in the 1980s. Gregory Bateson welcomed this new wave of, you know, understanding living systems, compared to the Darwinian lecture, I mean, of how life emerged on Earth. So it was a new idea and similar
Yeah,
idea.
Plamen.
But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
point is, yeah, that he had
Excuse me.
only good ideas in mind.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It
they-
was a good idea in the 80s and 90s because it was the time of reductionism, of logical positivism, and then it was
Yeah.
very convenient to open the panorama. But now the situation is very different, and we realize that these pseudo solutions by autopoiesis, systems theory, second order cybernetics, etc., are empty. They do not work as a common glue for science, facilitating conceptual circulation between disciplines, uniting, connecting well with society, particularly about information. Information is a concept, I mean, it is absolutely behind everything related to life. And you can realize, for instance, autopoiesis does not recognize information, does not recognize signals, and fails almost completely in that regard. And the initial failure, I have read the books of, particularly of Varela. I could even discuss with him personally many years ago before his death, and he recognized that he was not, autopoiesis was an idea they threw the something like that. He was not very much willing to discuss that.
I think yes, in the last years he actually distanced himself from autopoiesis. Yeah. I believe that was also yeah. It was interesting, but well, this is the evolution of ideas. I think there are certain guys also in mathematics. I think I have a book here by a South American guy. I can't find it here. Ah, yes. This Fernando Zalamea talking about mathematics. This is interesting book about actually the evolution of mathematical ideas. And yeah. When you read this book, you will understand that between mathematics and computation, there is a really glue. I mean, today everybody understands mathematics. It's not the mathematics of Gauss and even Rashevsky, who was actually a pure mathematician, or von Neumann. Today's mathematics is very computational, very digital, and now they hope, quantum computing is going to give us more tools, to make more complex models. Of course, it depends on, but this is the synthetic philosophy of using tools. We use cars for some purpose, or mathematics another new mathematics or theories. I've been swimming in all these different theories just to find the right one. I mean, and I couldn't find it. That's my bottom line so far. And in a way, when we see the history of physics, when we see the history of physics, probably the basic statements that Feynman made with relation to quantum computers are holding also for biology. Or we need biological computers. This could be only biological entities, no matter how. They could be also quantum computers, but having different, saying biological properties, evolving. I mean, in a way, we are here linked to artificial intelligence, whatever it may be now.
That's not the problem, Plamen. I think, just to make a reference, you will remember, I think it was in the 60s, the famous bridge between natural and social sciences and the humanities by Lord Snow. Do you remember? My point is that 60 years after that, we are even worse than in that time. Less consensus, less approach of science and society. It was more toxicity in societies, because in that time, comparing the 50s, 60s and our times, yeah, well, it is the same. I mean, let me come again to topics closer to our discussion. Could we have a special discussion on autopoiesis? So I will prepare my argument as well.
Okay.
The defenders, I would like to encounter someone also to help me attack.
Yeah, I think special discussion of autopoiesis would be a good idea, but with understanding of limitation of these concepts, with the relation of this concept to Rosen's MR systems and Ganti's chematon. Actually, Ganti was the first, I think, who suggested similar system. Just he first described somewhere, then published in Hungarian, and only in 2003 he published in English the book. And also limitation of autopoiesis, that it is still a dynamic system, but it is closed. It should evolve, and for evolving, the concept of codopoiesis is important.
And particularly the information flow.
Yes.
How the living system is continually open to the information flow,
Yes.
so to advance its life cycle. It's what every living creature does.
And how they generate new information.
It is information, the big absence in
Continuously generate new information and evolve. Yes.
I think, Gordana, you are using info-autopoiesis. Or you, Bill, can you say something, Gordana? You are not.
Yes, there's no question about the validity of autopoiesis in living systems. They self-construct themselves because it's driven by intelligence. Intelligent systems have a drive to sustain themselves in preferred states. We don't know. The problem that we face is that we don't know how it all began, and it frustrates us. And so we feel reluctant to begin from a premise that has a definitional uncertainty. How did cognitive competence begin? And we don't know, and it's hard to start with that. But nonetheless, we're stuck with it. It exists from the first cell forward from 3.8 or more billion years ago. And that's the system that we deal with. I think I'll offer a paper I wrote, and Abir was the editor in Biosystems. My colleagues and I devised a biogenic corollary to the constructal law. And it simply illustrates the point that in order to understand living systems, you have to model that they are an entwined correlation between natural thermodynamic flows, the drive for greater and greater currencies that flow through it, degrees of freedom, as Adrian Bejan articulated in the constructal law. But by adding a biogenic principle, you simply add information flows. And there isn't any question that in living systems are information dependent. And Pedro, you emphasized that. I couldn't agree more. In order to understand the living systems, you have to understand how physical constraints interchange with informational flows to enable continuous problem solving. And this involves an approach to things that's non-mathematical in some ways, and intensely mathematical in others. But it's the singular combination of the liberties and constraints of this dual entwined system that will be the most illuminating aspect of biology in the future going forward, I believe. And info-autopoiesis is an essential aspect of it, because the information flows are entirely based on the fact that each individual unit creator of information is the cell by definition, and each cell is self-creating its own reality, and its drive to be in multicellularity, be it either biofilms or holobionts, is a form of living wisdom of crowds, working to enhance information flows. Lastly, the central axiom of this new biogenic principle of the constructor law is there is never any unilateral flow of information in living systems. It's always all directional at the same time. And that's hard for us to grasp. There is no privileged causation in a living system.
Okay, my only, I would point to a couple of maybe minor absences, because information is realized at the cellular level via molecular recognition. Everything related to information at the cellular level is molecular recognition. Different ways, different strategies, different chains of transmission, but it is molecular recognition. And then it opens a new direction into your own thinking, I think. And the other point is that the definition of autopoiesis makes some crucial statement that I can prove in Escherichia coli, that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because it is the system that produces its own components. So to produce it, it is very repetitive. It is very clumsy definition.
This is paradoxal. It's paradoxal. I mean,
but Plamen, most Escherichia coli genome, maybe 30-50%, will never be expressed unless there is a suitable environment for it. And maybe 20% will never be expressed unless there are some antibiotics, some fungi, some phage are coming. So are tools that will be expressed or not? Usually not. And the expression will occur only because of the information flow arrived via molecular recognition. And this changed the game, I think.
There are ways to resolve such problems, and I saw it in the models of Aloysius Lee in category theory. So basically, he defined a new operator, the fork operator, to eventually dissolve such contradictions in the theory like autopoiesis, so something that is working based on his own generated components. So it is actually a contradiction in itself. But this guy Aloysius, we defined a new operator in his way of category theory to eventually split this definition into something that is mathematically provable. Because even Maturana and Varela, they are not mathematicians, but they define something that is contradictory to each other just by this single statement that you mentioned. And in order to resolve it, you have to create artificially a fork.
Not only that,
there are many contradictions in the theory. Yes.
But there is a point I don't like further, is that autopoiesis is very well taken by all the New Age people, the pseudo sellers of self-realization. I mean, it's the closure of the person on itself, and it is very good for all the new trends that isolate people. They don't. I mean, our nature is social, and you realize yourself by being social, not by being closed on yourself. Autopoiesis, blah blah blah. Look for the New Age relaxation, this body style. I mean, this is the new, or it was, I don't know. It was the new opium.
But you know, this problem was exactly solved by Gödel by saying actually his second theorem that said, okay, there is something defined on the base. I mean, the problem with the relationship in Maturana Varela is that there is a circle. There is endless circle closure, and it redefines itself multiple times in the future. Gödel said, okay, you can observe this, but you have to be outside the system. And nobody is really outside the system. That's the problem. I mean, even for us as scientists, we observe something, but even in quantum mechanics, it has proven we are part of the system. At that very moment that we watch at the system, we change the status. So it is probably, we observe something, and what we observe is influenced by our observation. And that's the phenomenon here, and basically this is what von Neumann appreciated in Gödel, to say, okay, this guy realized what is necessary in order to decouple systems, and they became friends, whatever. So the stories in this closure and these relationships, I saw another third dimension that was in one of my papers, what Maturana Varela and Rosen's relationship of science, having model and real system, it was two-dimensional. In order to continue this in the future, having a time in the third dimension, the system becomes a spiral. It's actually, it's endless spiral or whatever, development of some living organism, and the system states now it is not a closure, it's actually an open closure. You define the state in the next moment of time, I mean in the future, whatever it means.
But Plamen, I think that in a formal point of view, what you are saying is okay, but the problem outside this discussion, I realize, I am pointing that, let's say we live in a new society with surrounded by information engines all around, and it reminds me the 19th century industrial revolution, all the thermal engines, all the steam engines around. They had no science of thermodynamics. Thanks to the science of thermodynamics, engines were terrific. All the cars, the auto engine, the diesel engine. Thanks to having clear the science, and now we are in the turmoil created by thermodynamics, and the basic ideas of information and life are not provided. So we need a sort of an information catechism, a basic information curriculum to start to tell them, okay, let's understand what's the basics of information in life and in human societies. And there is an evolutionary continuum to understand that. And I think a very good idea by Andrei Igamberdiev was this issue on anthropogenesis, because we see the link between many things of the human novelties and the social reality of our times, so to speak. I mean, the cruise of anthropogenesis has made possible our evolution, but we have terrific weak points in the social relationship. One of these terrific weak points is being exploited by the new information machines around, and we cannot provide, let's say, sound antibiotics, because somehow they also have to be based on science. And in science, in basic science, what you say, Plamen, or what you have been argued, is not enough. It's not enough. It does not go to the profound realities of our lives, of information in our lives, information in our social relationships, etc. So
here also the impact of, for example, Rosen's theory is not so big in modern biology, and this is the question. So we need somehow to relate, there was a discussion if, for example, Rosen considered encoding genes or something else with repair or replacement. So it's still, we need somehow to approach the theory of Robert Rosen to real biological events that we have. And I think he was not always doing this in a correct way. For example, there was some weird experiments of Komuro-san about observables, and he thought that it is proof of his theory in one of his papers, and so on. So we need somehow to reunite theoretical biology approaches like anautopoiesis and MR systems to real biological events. And also, as I mentioned, for example, logical indecidability and physical uncertainty, they are also related. And in the whole theory, we need to get a concept that would explain the relation of these two. So physical limitation of computation, they are actually expressed in this undecidability in certain sense, and this can be resolved. And also quantum system is developing by resolving this uncertainty and so on. So this is also the part of future concept in biology.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, in a way, I'm making the relationship to these two guys, Newton and Leibniz. Basically, they made the same job, developing differential integral calculus, but
Yeah.
they had a very pragmatic way. I mean, it was actually abstract mathematics that is used for anything now, but it was the calculation of surfaces in some way with their methods. The same was done by Gauss and the other mathematicians. They were abstracting from the physical. It was physics and mathematics were all the time hand in hand, more or less. I mean, there were guys in the past that were both physicians and mathematicians, which is not the case in biology. In biology, the first guys that we know, or at least I know, are Rashevsky and Rosen and all this. I mean, Louis, all these guys.
Yeah.
Starting with category theory, then I moved to Andrei Igamberdiev, and she also told me that her theory is basically, it's also a different kind of category theory, not the one of Aloysius Wee, who actually developed everything on the base of Rosen and Rashevsky. But basically, it is also very linked to some physical phenomena. I mean, something that is also in biology. They are not so abstract. Mathematics is not purely abstract, and I had this discussion with Louis Kaufmann, who is topologist, and of course he said everything. I mean, we have some material examples in order to define all these calculi, also in knot theory. I mean, everything that is defined there as operators between in the knots. I have here somewhere an example is coming from the real physical world that we are observing, and the stories that we began. Maybe our problem is that modeling biological processes is only has taken part in the past 50 years. So physics and mathematics have been developing together for 300 or 500 years, and biology began just in the past century with the models of, the first methods were with Mendel, all these genetical methods, but later it is still too much physical biology. I mean, there are phenomena that can be described. I mean, that was my search, to try to define some kind of maybe new mathematics that is more biological, but everybody... Okay.
Plamen, excuse me. I think you are... I basically agree with you, but that's so to speak, that's a direction of thought. But we need another direction of thought so that we can communicate multidisciplinary environment.
Yes, correct.
We need a condensed, basic, new formulation of information and life. We don't have it. We don't have.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe this is intentional. Maybe this is. I mean, I'm not happy with the red definition of AI, for instance. I mean, it was 30 years ago. AI was different.
But Plamen, you should be aware of something, that most scientists have, let's say, a capability to handle 2,000 ideas, and then when you propose, when you go deep into the problem of mathematics and biology, you are spending maybe 500 or 800 ideas. And then in order to communicate in a multidisciplinary way, you have to give a small collection of fundamental ideas. It has to be small so that other disciplines can assimilate this nucleus of thought. And we are failing in that. That's my civilized way
Oh,
of
yes, you're right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
That's
More examples.
I see. So I discuss autopoiesis and I discuss all that because they don't give the appropriate nucleus of maybe 100 ideas or 50 ideas. I don't know how many. But we have a terrible human limitation on how many concepts, ideas can we assemble and can we work with. And so we have a nice task ahead. And I think this is one of the fundamentals. I think it should be one of the fundamental aims of the information studies academia. I mean, to try to clarify things and to make a new nucleus of multidisciplinary thought, I think.
Yeah.
Jorge is saying that he is going to close the register. Gordana, would you mind to make the closure statement of our meeting?
Oh, I would like to delegate this to Bill. He would express it much better. We are like very close in ideas, so I think he would do it.
I'll offer a closing point of view. AI will not become conscious in its current format through the large language models the way many in the press are touting that it's right over the horizon. It's too expensive to figure out how to do it. We don't know how to begin, but it doesn't matter. Those of us who believe that cells are conscious realize that there's an easy cheat. They will, through 3D scaffolding, they will compile synthetic organisms that are combinations of AI capacities and objectively competent conscious cells, creating new forms of life that are both thrilling and frightening, and I don't know what the future holds. I know it holds that, but where that goes, I have no idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, too. I think this is an open topic. We can continue it at the next time. I mean, more different aspects, but it was interesting. I mean, just to exchange
sure,
ideas. I cannot hear you, Pedro.
Okay, sorry, I have turned off my micro. Okay, I was telling Jorge, do you want to say something?
No, we're going to close right now.
I think it was a good discussion, so we will continue next time, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. All the best.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Nice to see you.